If I had to pick a favorite, I'd pick Faces. It was my real initial film of which I had any involvement in. I was one of the producers, the cameraman. I edited the picture. There was a unity and a desire to just be involved in something and find some kind of satisfaction from that. That will always stay in my mind. For me, it's the best.
John brought me the script that he had finished. John didn't ask you to contribute things while he wrote the script. He liked to write the script, and Faces was fully scripted. And, he said, "What do you think?" And I read it, and I said, "It's extremely powerful." I was shocked by it.
I thought it was about a segment of American life that I had not paid too much attention to because I was living it. And I thought, my goodness, here's a script. It's about life that goes on around us every day that your neighbors don't particularly pay attention to. So in that sense, I thought it was exciting.
The script was nothing anybody would have done. When he realized that there was just no possible way of doing it the way you wanted to do it, as long as somebody else was paying for it. That's why we put our own money in our pictures, which is it's very, that gives independent filmmaking a new name, because it was hard, but it was worth every bit of it. He said, "Well, which part would you like to play?" I liked both of the parts so much, but I was pregnant. I had just gotten pregnant, and I was not feeling at all well. And so I thought, maybe I better stick with the part of Jeannie, because the other part was very physical and longer, and I just didn't want to do anything that would be crazy. So the thing is, he cast Lynn Carlin, who was so marvelous in the part. And then I found out she was pregnant too.
I didn't know anything. I didn't, I had done plays and things like that when I was a kid, but I was just really a neophyte. I was cast by accident, really. We were all at Screen Gems, but nobody was producing anything at the time, and so there was free time. And I was a secretary for Bob Allman at Screen Gems across the hall, and he was out of town. And John realized I had nothing to do, so they came over and said, "Come on, we need some help. Come in, and we're reading actors for this picture. Can you help us for this play?" So I went over, and I, read with the actors that would come in on the auditions, and I guess they began to like what they heard, so they read me later, fourth horror, third horror, second horror, first horror. Well, maybe Maria the wife. So Bob Altman came back. He didn't think it was so interesting that I was kind of hanging out there all the time, so he fired me. But in the meantime, I called John and said, are we really making a movie? Because if we are, you better hurry. I'm like 5 minutes pregnant. And he said, "Oh, yeah, well, Jenna's about 3 months pregnant, and we're shooting all of her stuff." But that's really how I got into it, and it was never, I think John took my husband and me to dinner and asked if I'd like to do the film, and then he got out a cocktail napkin, and basically it said on there that I allowed them to do anything that he wanted to do, whenever he wanted to do it, and I was perfectly happy. Nothing about money, nothing about anything. And my husband said the next day, "We signed on a cocktail napkin, that whole thing."
Oh, I love you when you look like that.
Look like what? Tell me quick, I'll write it down.
I couldn't think of anybody else that could have played that the way she did, with her look, her eyes, and her hair, and that marvelous laugh of hers, that big, free laugh that she had. I looked forward to working with her every time I did, plus she was such a sexy woman. I told her last night, she said, "Oh, I gave that up." I said, "No, you don't. You just haven't done it in a while."
Seymour seems to have always been there, as far as I can remember. Certainly, he was there at Shadows. He was all through our lives on all of our pictures. Seymour Cassel is an enormously talented person, with very high energy and given to pranks and flirting with the girls. And I think he's in about everything that John did.
He was my best friend. We hung out an awful lot. John was like an older brother to me that I never had, and he was also a mentor. John and I had such a good relationship, I think, because I knew he was crazy, and in a good sense, and he knew I was crazy. And the things we did together, the fun, the mischievousness we got into, it was fun, and I don't know how Jenna put up with me at all, or how my wife put up with John.
John thought a lot about different actors that would be right for that part. It's like naming a baby or something. You just suddenly, there's so many names. But he wanted a strong guy, but a guy that was leading an empty, tragic life. But he should be of a certain age where he could have accumulated wealth. And John Marley suddenly came up, and he was so perfect that there was no discussion of it afterwards. He was wonderful.
Gee, I buried 8 relatives in the past 6 years. There's nobody left but me. I'm just a mild success in a dull profession, and I want to start over again. And I've got a bad kidney.
I know that John's usual way was not a lot of rehearsal. The whole cast would come in, and we'd read it.
We start every film with that, sitting around a table just reading through the script.
And then it would be lunchtime. We'd all have lunch, and then we'd go back and we'd read it again. And then we'd knock it off for a couple of hours in the afternoon. Then in the evening, we'd read it again.
And this would go on for a couple of weeks at least, just these readings. And then we would start blocking and working on the blocking. And then when it got to the point where we were shooting, we'd still block the rehearsals. More than anything else, his thought was to give the actors the time that they needed in the shooting, in the rehearsals, to develop their characters, to play it out. And since he didn't have to be responsible to any other entity for the money, he could either finish early, shoot later, do what he wanted to do, but it was always for the benefit of the actors and the piece.
He decided to shoot the film, which he did this on every film afterwards. Minnie and Moskowitz, husbands, was shoot it from beginning to end. He did that for the actors, and he did it for himself as a director.
Actually, he gave very little direction. And sometimes you'd say, John, I don't know if I'm, can you give me some help here? And he'd say, no. And I'd say, why not? You're the director and I'm an actress. He said, I wrote this script. I gave it to you, I gave it to Peter, gave it to Ben, Seymour. He said, now you own it. You own your part. Nobody in the world should know more about this character than you do.
This was mine. What I was creating, I owned. I made it happen. I contributed to it, and everyone felt that. And that was a magical thing about John. Then you were that character. You could do it any way you wanted to do it. He didn't want you to think about it too much. He wanted you to play it and to get in and have the interaction.
No actor was allowed to speak with another actor about his or her part. When we weren't acting, we came back to ourselves. There was nothing. So that in just a very short time, you begin to think of that person's actually being that character. And you begin kind of separating yourself. There's not a lot of, joviality and talking about someone saying, did you, when I did, none of that. It takes a tremendous, in-depth study of a part to own it. And you shouldn't have someone you think, oh, he'll do it for me, or he'll get me out of this spot. You have to go through it and find it.
John Marley was very much the actor. I think he was a little disenchanted with how we worked because I think that was hard for him. He wanted more discipline and to understand it better and the old-fashioned way.
Marley had done theater in New York. He'd been in the studio, and so John's way of working, nobody had experienced that.
I had to do a lot of those dances where you twirl around and round and round. I thought I was going to die, and I was getting grouchier and grouchier, and I don't know. We must have done it 20, 30 times.
Jenna said, John, must I remind you I'm pregnant?
Instead of my nice, indulgent husband coming and saying, come on, darling, put your feet up and we'll rest you. But he'd say, come on, no, we've got to get this done. Blump, 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 and turned into a director on me.
And John would say, I know. Let's just do it once more, yeah.
So we had a few scraps on that one.
He always was able to get you to do what he wanted you to do without having to, he just got it out of you, but he seemed to know when you weren't being honest, and it didn't matter if it was me or if it was Seymour. He could reach down inside people and get them at the gut level, I think.
But he knew all the actors he worked with, and he knew them better sometimes than we knew ourselves.
With all those young boys, of course I liked it. Yeah.
And really, I think, at least at that time, John was one of the very few directors who paid any attention to women of a certain age. There's just so much that they revealed in their lives and their loneliness and their desire to be young again. And if not young, at least to be able to have some of the same good times, and it just shouldn't stop at a certain point. And I thought those were very affecting scenes.
Dances, these wild, crazy dances. They do something to me inside.
Dorothy Gulliver, she really was. There was a lot of her in the part she played. It was really gut-wrenching, especially now that I'm about the age I think that Dorothy was when she played the part. So, I identify now with that.
I could just dance all night with you.
We were all in awe of Dorothy Gulliver. She really played it, and she really went for it. And God, you fell in love with her. And John only gave me one bit of advice. When she comes around, I go, Chetty. And I come over and she says, kiss me, Chetty. And he said, when you do this, just be gentle with her. And so I kissed her, John, and he was so right. I mean, he just was so on with his instincts. But he read and knew actors so well. He could come up and say, see, what are you, asleep? You know, or whatever. I know, let's do it again. Others he'd go up to and say, come on, you're bad. Come on. You know, do something with it. Have some fun with it, for God's sake. For me, he didn't want to see you act. There was nothing more boring than watching an actor act, because you could see him acting. You know, when you pulled him in, you knew it, just with the intensity that he would watch a scene. John was the greatest audience I've ever worked with.
He would get laughing so hard, and we could see him. And he'd hold his nose sometimes, trying not to.
I can see him going, biting his hand to keep from laughing and screwing up the scene.
John had a very, very unique way of laughing. You know, he'd sort of put his hand up to his nose and he would snicker. He didn't really have a laugh. He would go, like he was coming out through his nose and he didn't want it to escape.
Sometimes he'd win a take and we'd say, all right, now that's enough. That's just enough. No more laughing at the thing. But also he laughed not just at funny things, but when he was delighted with something. He could be very sad. But if it went to his thinking perfectly and it happened on the screen, he'd laugh again.
When he wasn't getting quite what he wanted, he did slap me in the face and said, don't you cry, don't you dare cry.
The shooting of this scene was particularly difficult for Lynn, and John kept trying to get more out of her, to break her down.
And I'm going, you know, John said, see, you got to slap her. I said, John, and I go over, I talk to her, I said, it's a woman, I'm not going to really hit her. I hit her on the neck. He says, you got to slap her. I go back and I slap her, and he got up there and he whacked her.
When he slapped me, other than the fact of the initial embarrassment, it didn't really shake my confidence. I was disappointed that I hadn't been able to give him a certain thing, but maybe he didn't convey, you know, this was the way he did it. And I don't know that he could have told me what he wanted. That awful thing of, you know, embarrassed, disappointed, humiliated. I don't know if you could have told me if I could have ever done it other than that. It worked. I think it worked.
I didn't want to hit you, but don't go to sleep on me. Oh, Come on now, cry. That's it. That's life, honey. Tears of happiness, man. Just do it.
It was physically very, very exhausting. It was just very emotional, and John did it a lot. And, you know, Seymour stuck his finger down my throat. He didn't pretend he did.
Seymour worked as part of the crew for about the first month, maybe 2 months even, because his character didn't come in till midway through the film. And when he had to stop working the crew and become the actor, become Chet, he came in and we had rehearsed on camera, and we rolled the camera and we started the scene, and after about 5 minutes, John just blew up. He said, "God damn it, Seymour, get into this story. Become this." He went crazy. We went on for another 5 minutes, and then John said, "That's a wrap." And we shut down. We came back the next day, same thing happened. Maybe we shot for 15 minutes. And he said, "That's a wrap." Everybody went home. The third day, we started up again, but we never even got to shoot. John was so unhappy with rehearsals that he said, "We're not shooting today." By the fourth day, Seymour came in, and boy, he was bang on. He was really into the character. He had lost any vestige of being one of the boys, you know, and became Chet. But, I mean, it takes great courage, particularly when you're spending your own money, you know, to say, "Okay, we're not shooting today." You know, get it right, because until you do, we're not going to shoot.
Have a few belts and go up to some chick's bed and make it, maybe.
Make it?
Just make it, baby. You're out and out, lay down and...
John wanted the natural behavior of people. And people saw that movie and, my God, no one believed we were actors. I mean, they knew Jenna was, and they knew John Marley was, but people would say, "Jesus, I didn't know you were an actor." And then everybody thought, because Shadows had been an improvisation, that Faces was improvised. And I defy anybody to tell me what scene of any is improvised. The only improvisation in there I did, and that was the songs, because we had no rights for money. So, you know, when I first started dancing, when they put on the red meat, mama, don't want no potatoes, no onions.
All I wanna do is tongue you. Come on, that's it. Get up. Where you... Come here.
John made everybody feel as if you didn't rehearse, you know, and if you hadn't a script. And everything was very scripted. Even if he was unhappy, he would take it all apart and rewrite it, and then you learned it, even if it was that night.
That did not mean, though, ever that you were not free to improvise. If something happened, you reacted to it. If something dropped on the floor, you picked it up. You talked to the other person about it. If someone struck you as having a certain attitude, I'm talking about the character, and you answered it. You felt the utmost freedom.
He was great for giving you the confidence and the liberty to take chances, you know, and he would go with it a lot of the time. And so for him, you would try anything.
I got news. I'm so mechanical. Honey, it's absolutely ludicrous how mechanical a person can be.
When that scene on the bed, on the couch with her, you know, he said, "See, do it off camera. See, do the mechanical man. You're mechanical, honey." It was just an idea that was thrown to me that allowed that invention to happen. And he was wonderful about that.
He never wanted to say cut. In fact, I am convinced that if he could have spent his life just shooting a film, he would have been very happy.
John made it very clear that no actor was to ever stop to correct himself or say cut or something. Many actors, they'll say a line and the other person will say something that they weren't expecting, they'll stop. That was the only thing that I ever saw John really get angry with. If anybody stopped himself, he said, "You just keep going." And sometimes he'd let it run for a while just to keep us in training, you know. And that got to be kind of fun, too.
The feeling on the set was always easy. It was a joyous experience. John had unimaginable energy that he infected you with.
We would quit shooting when the older actors, John could see the energy start to dissipate in them. They say, "Rap, that's it for tonight, guys. We'll still do it tomorrow night." We'd always start every night at 7. We'd go out and play basketball, drink beer till 6, 7 in the morning. It didn't matter because Frank Zappa lived next door and he had a recording studio in his garage. So it wasn't like we were bothering anybody. When I go to work, I always think everybody will have that same kind of love of actors. Because, and I learned this from him, they tell your story. I don't care what it looks like. I don't go there to see the lighting. If it's supposed to look beautiful, fine. They give you 2 hours to light the damn thing.
We were not hampered by sound or camera. We wore body mics. In those days, that was very seldom done because they aren't as good. I mean, you don't get the really finest quality. But we decided to sacrifice a little of that for the freedom, because if you have a microphone, you can get up and walk out there and walk over there, walk back. You have to realize when we first started acting, there were marks on the floor, and you went from that mark to that mark. Some of the more experienced actors would say, well, you just see them out of the side of things. But that's such an interruption of your concentration, of your character. I didn't like that at all, but no actors do. This was much easier because you don't have to think about technical things. There was no place that you couldn't move. Also, he lit generally. He would light a whole area. The hero was the focus puller because he never knew what we were going to do. If we started going off and he's in that, I don't know how they do it anyway, but that's a very hard job.
And so as a result, when you're bang on and everything is in focus and everything runs right, you almost think it's a lucky accident. You know, but usually we're trying to catch up to the players because they never move the same place twice in a row. Yeah, and that's why it goes out of focus. We try to catch up. But we shot a lot of scenes where we moved handheld, where it was up to the operator to really feel the moment and get in. I mean, there were never these preconceived things, or else you'd get a shove from John and you'd realize that you should be panning over to the other person. And then you develop a kind of rhythm. There's a kind of musical approach. And to decide what the scene was, whether you were going into a jazz-type tempo where anything was possible, or you wanted it to be more romantic so that the moves were just more languid, you know, that you would just go back and forth, you'd feel it in. You would develop a rhythm, and that's actually how you would shoot the scene.
John loved to shoot the faces tight, and he left pieces.
He wanted to get as close as it was possible, because he felt that these characters in this Middle American scenario, that you had to actually get inside. You had to feel as though you were that person. You had to experience what they were going through as an audience. So we shot a lot of close-ups.
The camera was always in your face. And I think the hardest thing to adjust to was going home and not having anybody follow me around when I was brushing my teeth or nobody cared anymore. No, it became very natural. It just did not, for me, it didn't bother me having it right there.
So we'd all take turns in shooting it, and John would be down on the floor shooting like this, and I'm saying, John, you're going to throw your back out. You better let me shoot it. Screw you, see. I'm not, you know. And it was that competitive fun. We'd go to the dailies and look, you're soft. No, it's coming in, you know. And it was that fun of really making a film.
Because John had this kind of communal approach towards making a film. This couldn't work for me. I threatened to leave on the second day of shooting. And so I went to John and I said, look, John, I'm going to leave. I can't stay. This is not my idea of how you do this. What's the matter? I said, well, you can't have so many people. How can you even have a conversation with the person who shot the shot and understand what's going on when you have to talk to 6 different people, you know, within the context of an entire scene? I said, I can't work like that. Look, I give up. I won't operate. I'll just do all the lighting, and when we use the double cameras, I'll operate one of them. But we got to settle on one person to shoot, and I think it ought to be George Sims. And John said, okay, from the next day on, for the rest of that picture. George was the operator on most of the shots.
He became the operator because he could laugh while he was in, and he would never, you know, shake the camera.
Once violin?
She tucked it under her chin.
She plucked at her strings.
They were creating a lot of things. I mean, when they had to do a dolly shot, I mean, they improvised to do, and the joy of if they had captured it working with, minimal kinds of equipment.
Whatever we needed, we'd find it some way. I mean, people were so kind to us, and we never thought that, gee, you shouldn't ask for this.
Anybody who knew him was somewhere in those films. He recruited everybody.
I mean, when we shot at the Whiskey A Go-Go, we did that in one night, called all our friends. Don Siegel's an extra in there, the director. Everybody's in there, some writers and everything. Haskell Wexler's one of the cameramen. He's worried to death that the union's going to find out, show up, and he's shooting a non-union film.
Shooting the scene at the Whiskey A Go-Go was mad. It was just like it looked in the film. And it was kind of crazy. I mean, and I don't know. He must have had multiple cameras that night because it was not stop and start that I recall. It wasn't, cut and we'll do this angle or that angle or whatever. He just kind of got it all. It was fluid. It was noisy and live, really, as it was. The gals dancing up and all of us drinking and noise and smoke and yeah. It was all at one time. I think it was the same at the Losers Club on Los Angeles.
And I had maybe 8 to a dozen quartz lights, which I was trying to light everything with. And it was a large set. And we were struggling along. And Haskell Wexler came to visit us, and he brought a friend. And as we were shooting, we finished a shot, Haskell came to me and said, "Is this all you have? You don't have any more lights or anything like that?" And I said, "This is it, I learned from the Italians a long time ago, you use one light or a dozen lights, whatever you've got to make it work." So his friend who was next to him said, "Well, can you wait maybe an hour and a half or two? I can probably help you out." And sure. I went to John and said, can we stop for a while? Haskell and his buddy said they might be able to do something. And John said, sure, we can rehearse. A little while later, about an hour and a half, 2 hours later, a huge truck shows up filled with equipment. And it becomes unloaded by the guys who brought it, which is a greater benefit. And they helped me set up in the club, and now we had all the lights that we needed. And I later find out that Haskell's friend is Lloyd Garnell, who had just taken his equipment back after finishing the motion picture Hawaii. He's also the guy who invented the Garnell light. And what he said to me just blew me away. He said, use it for as long as you need it. When you're finished, give me a call. I'll have my guys come and load it up. So that kind of cooperation and generosity happened often on Faces. When we needed a projection room, out of the blue.
Good morning, Mr. Forrest. Good morning, Mr. Forrest.
When we tried to think of where we could go, the only one we could think of, we knew that David Wolper had his own building on Sunset Boulevard, but we didn't know David Wolper. In any case, John called him and got him on the phone and said, "David, can you do us a favor? We need this, and we don't have any money." And so David said, "Okay, can you shoot on Saturday?" "Sure, we'd shoot any time that we can." And so very early Saturday morning, we showed up there with the crew, and David led us into his building and told us that we could shoot all day, whenever it was, and to just give him a call when we were finished and go out, and the doors would lock themselves and everything would be cool. And there was no location fee or anything like that. But we had that happen to us a number of times on Faces. The cooperation was more than you could ever expect. Faces was a blessed event. When we finished Faces, because we didn't have enough money, we had this very innovative idea that we wouldn't transfer the sound, which you normally do along with printing the negative. You transfer the sound every day. But because we didn't have the money, we didn't do it. We thought we'd wait till the end of the film, and when we would accumulate some money, then we'd transfer the stuff. Well, we did that.
So they didn't realize until about 200,000 feet of film later that the sound man had a little problem and
that everything was out of sync. And so we went to about 4 different sound houses, and every answer was, you can't use it. You have to start shooting all over again. Well, that wasn't impossible. And so we went back, and for the next few months, we're cutting the track in front of, between, and afterwards to try and match the lip movements of the people speaking. And that's what you see. And so when sometimes you think that the sound is out of sync, it really is, you know, but it's the best of what we could do.
Don't let this sophisticated exterior fool you. I believe in Aesop's fables and Walt Disney.
All right, Freddie. Okay, all right.
All right, my left eyeball.
We got to that point, I was completely broke. And I said, I got to get some money. So I left California. I had to come back to New York.
It just takes a lot of time when you're an independent because you have to stop when you can't get the film out of the lab because you've run out of money, you've mortgaged your house, you have to go out and work and bring money in. That takes time. John and I were lucky because we both had established ourselves in an acting career before John got interested in directing. I never thought he was going to be a director. We never entered my mind.
To him, the film was everything. Here's a guy that could go out without his wallet, and generally did, but he could remember every frame of film, and he'd drive us nuts in the country. I know there's a shot, there's a piece of Dorothy Gulliver, right, just as she comes around the corner to kiss her, and I know we got it, and we're looking to, we'd have to look through these tins forever. John, I can't find it. Damn it, I know it's there, okay? I'll find it myself. No, we'll keep looking.
They'd be out there in the garage cutting room from early morning all day.
This guy never slept because he calls me at home it's 1:15 in the morning, and I'm up because I maybe smoked a joint. I'm watching an old movie on TV, and did I wake you? And I go, no, John, I'm watching an old movie. He said, no, I woke you. I'm sorry. I said, where are you, in the cutting room? He says, yeah, you want to come over? I go, okay. And I'd hang up and I'd go in and tell my wife, I'm going to go cut some film with John. I'd stay there till 7:30 in the morning. We'd go have breakfast.
He liked to feel the film in his hands as he looked. The film ran through, and that meant something sort of magical to him.
He gave one reel to Mo to edit. He gave one reel to someone else to edit, another reel to, a third person and a fourth person. And so they were all doing their own version of the film. And then John gave me a call, asked me to come out to California to look at what they had done. I came out and I looked at it, and I couldn't believe what I saw. I said, this is terrible. And he said, well, what do you propose? I said, if you want to continue, you got to go back to the dailies. Let's put it back in the dailies and put it back. There's too many wonderful things. And he said, okay, I'll do that. That was his familiar refrain, okay. But you have to stay here and do it, he told me. So I stayed there. I stayed at his house for almost another year, doing the editing, leaving my family back east.
2 years later, John came and said, I don't like that scene with you and John Marley, and I want to reshoot it. And I said, terrific. I'm 3 months pregnant with a second child. It will match.
By the time John had finished and edited it, she'd had another baby.
Anyway, we got through the editing and then decided to take it on the road to Canada because we wanted to play in cities that were really not frequented by previews. And the audience, so as a result, was not that sophisticated. So we decided to play in Toronto and Montreal. And we set up the theaters. We went to Toronto and played at the New Yorker Theater and played at midnight because we didn't want anybody to pay. And so at that time, the film ran 3 hours and 40 minutes. And so at midnight, there was all these people lined up to come to see the film. Every seat was taken. People were standing in the back. You couldn't walk. I mean, so many people sitting in the aisles. And we watched it, and the applause, the appreciation from the people was so great. And we went outside, and there had to be 200 people still standing in line wanting to see the film. So we had to go back to the theater owner and say, let's talk to the projectionist. Could we show it again? And the guy was so excited, he said, sure. And we talked to the projectionist, and he was willing to show it. So at about 4 o'clock in the morning, we showed it the second time. Yeah, and the reaction, I'll always remember that. It was just quite wonderful. And we came back and realized where we could make cuts because we couldn't play it at that length. And we did that. We had an invitation to play at the Venice Film Festival. We didn't have any dubbing, and we didn't have any subtitles. And so we played it. And about 25 minutes into the film, people were standing up and yelling, "Fascista, comunista," yelling at the film because they couldn't understand what was going on and didn't cater to their needs. And then you start hearing, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom. The sound of the doors, you know how you have to push them in order to open in the exits? People leaving in droves. And I thought, oh, it's over. They hate it. They hate us. And it went on like that, and of course we won 5 awards. I remember the New York Film Festival, and I went to John and I said, you know, they're interested and would be nice to show at New York Film Festival. And he said, well, tell them I want opening night or closing night or screw them. And he said, I can't. We already have the opening night picture and we have the closing night picture, but let me see the film. I'll do the very best I can for it. And John says, the hell with them. They don't want to give us opening night or closing night? Forget them. So I sent the film anyway, and of course they loved it. And 2 days later, we had an arrangement with Walter Reed to distribute the picture, and it went on to play at the Little Carnegie Theater on 57th Street for 18, 19 weeks.
Then it played in Toledo, it played in Oklahoma City, it played in Kansas City, it played all over America. A black and white movie. We checked the box office at the Reed Theater up here and see how much it did, because it ran there like 22 weeks or whatever. And that was great. We would, but it was the excitement knowing that more people were seeing it, that they were talking about it.
The critics were fabulous. They were wonderful. Judith Crisk gave it about 3 or 4 glowing pages in the New Yorker, and Richard Schickel did a beautiful one in Life magazine, and it really knocked everybody's socks off. And then obviously there were a few that kind of said, what the hell is going on?
Did we know that it was a groundbreaking sort of art film that would receive the reviews that it did? No. We never even thought about it. We were just doing what we wanted to do.
Seymour always said, this is fabulous, and it's going to be nominated, and my husband said, don't say those things. Don't get her excited, because it's not, it couldn't.
It was astounding, and it was thrilling, and we were all absolutely delighted.
To be nominated under any circumstances, I'm sure would be, but to have it be, as by then we all realized, it was sort of a milestone for film, and Seymour was nominated.
You think I do this for the Academy? When I'm in an airport and a guy or woman says, I love what you do. You're really good. I look forward to seeing you. I've done my job, and I've done it good, and I love what I do. And for a stranger to tell me that means more to me than how many votes I got at the Academy. I do it because I love doing it. And most of my work I do for nothing. If I weren't an actor, I'd probably be a homeless person because I talk to everybody as it is. John was happier for me than he was for himself, and he got a nomination for screenplay. It was not about him. He got the gratification of make people angry and loving and happy and stirring it up, and he loved to do that.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Do we emasculate you? Poor little boy, losing his virility.
Well, I don't have it anymore.
I saw it one time with John when it opened in England. We stayed through it, and God only knows how many. I'd seen it 3 or 4 times by then, and he said, God, that's a great movie.
I'll tell you, Faces is a tough movie to watch, but you'll be rewarded. I mean, I want films to do more than just entertain me. I want them to make me think.
You're shocked, aren't you, old Dickie, old pal? What do you think she is? You think she's some clean towel that's never been used?
It's a realistic approach to life. I think the good and bad is what you find in life.
Because you're a man who doesn't say what you mean very well. What you meant was this was a wonderful evening, and you enjoy my house and you like me. But like you said, you're crude.
I just really have to say I think that it's John's great talent to be able to show different facets of people, because he wasn't afraid of anything. He wasn't afraid of people doing something unsympathetic and then something that would be sympathetic. He saw people in their great complexities.
When you look at faces and you go, my God, these are people. The pettiness of people, the gratuitousness of it, of taking each other for granted.
I want a divorce.
When you see faces and you hear all of that empty laughter, that says it just much better than I could ever say it. Made the hair stand out in the back of your neck.
With John, there was always a little bit of the autobiographical, because his, I don't know that he intentionally did it, or if it was just he wrote from himself. Everything was so honest.
Nobody cares. Nobody has the time to be vulnerable to each other.
I mean, he said to me often that, when people want to know things such as what we're doing here, trying to evolve as to who really John Cassavetes was, he said, they want to know about me, let them see my films. But knowing him for as many years as I worked with him, which was about 30, he never settled for less than what he wanted and hoped to get more. And that's what he strove for, was always to go beyond the expectation.
The films I made with John and Jenna and Benny, they're priceless to me. Nothing compares to working with John, and I think I tear up when I talk about him because I miss him.
We all feel that we had a privileged little spot in time where you could have fun and be free and, try to do some of the things you really wanted to do. It was a wonderful time.